with a good beat, thumping, cranked up on your headphones. You know, it gets your mojo pumped first thing in the morning, or at any other time of day for that matter. And no one knows that better than Dr. Dre, Jimmy Iovine, and the crew of Beats. Since they started, they've created an amazing range of products that capture what it's like to be in a recording studio. In this very special opening keynote interview, we have Luke Wood, President and Chief Operating Officer of Beats Electronics LLC, the parent company. He's here to talk about all this and more, and here to interview him is music industry veteran Ruuben van den Heuvel from The Hill.
Everywhere I go, I'll ever seem to hear it. No matter where I go, I'll ever seem to see it. Everywhere I go, I'll ever seem to hear it. No matter where I go.
Good morning.
I'll ever seem to
See if this mic's working. We've had a little black and white conversation here, and
I had to go black.
Luke went black. Quick setup. We've got 90 minutes and 46 seconds, so it's going to be fairly quick today. Had the pleasure of sitting with Luke yesterday, and we spent an hour and a half together, and I still wasn't sated in terms of all the questions I wanted to ask. So we're going to roll a quick tape, and then come back and have a bit of a interaction between us. Then we're going to throw it to the audience, because I'm sure you'll want to ask a lot. So I think Dre said that very interesting, that you built this so that music would sound like it was supposed to. So let's start off. What was the genesis of this idea? How did the company come together? What's the story behind the story?
So Beats truly is an idea. You know, it really started with Jimmy Iovine, the chairman of Interscope F&A&M's desire to figure out how do we use our media to push out, to connect with our consumer. And the genesis really goes back probably to the early 90s. And it's a confluence of three things. One is the obvious massive disruption of online file sharing and what that did to the traditional music business. The second was what happened with consumer electronics. So as it really became about convenience, not quality, and as there's a proliferation of very cheap OEM-delivered devices, suddenly sound became deprioritized to the point that it didn't even matter. So whether you're talking about a $5.99 notebook or feature phones at that time, so you suddenly had the market flooded with electronics that all played sound, but sound was, if even a tertiary effect, something deep behind video gaming and video and email and all the other feature sets. And then the third thing was a positive effect, which is digital recording, which is really moving from analog to digital. Two things happen. One is you're able to capture a lot more sound in the bottom end in particular, especially with 2496, more definition. But also in the home, in the car, suddenly you had subs, a proliferation of sub-amplifiers everywhere. So the bottom end sang. And so for the first time, really starting in the early 90s, people were making music and writing melodic passages for the bottom end. So you really had three distinct things that are all children of digitization. And what that did is it created both conflict and opportunity. And the company now is 3 years old, and we really pretty much stayed true to that.
And how many people are in the company? How's the company look?
The company is it's very lean right now. We have a manufacturing and distribution partnership in our devices business, but the company itself is only 12 people.
And how did you get involved? What was the story there?
So I spent the last 21 years in the music business, and I was a marketing executive and then an A&R executive. And my last role at Interscope, I had two jobs. So I ran the rock label, DGC Interscope, so I still went out and found talent and made records. And then my other job is I was the chief strategy officer. And as that job, which I started around 2007, I oversaw business development, digital and technology at our business unit of Universal. And initially, Jimmy Iovine and I myself were very frustrated in that we really couldn't harness what we knew was our core capacity as a business. You know, we knew in the building we had incredible marketing people with unbelievable time to market. We understood street culture. We understood how to deliver an authentic message. But what we just had this issue is that our product, the price point was voluntary, and we were fighting against that. So we really started looking at the deal flow of where is it going to come from? Where's the next platform? Where's the next opportunity? And we tried a lot of things, and very quickly, Beats just rang the bell.
And if you look at the notion of fixing the economy of sound, which is, I think, a catchphrase within the company, perhaps, how do you see that? You're sitting in the studio with artists, you're spending all this time making these great recordings and tweaking it, and then it turns into something that ends up on some iPod buds, which I think Jimmy said we're only in the packaging to make sure the device worked. So that's sort of an end-to-end situation. So for the audience here, how do you see that from having great sound to now getting great sound?
You know, the first way to answer that question is really to kind of describe how tragic the current marketplace is in terms of how people deal with sound and how degraded it is. So, I was fortunate to spend 20 years. I myself was a musician. I had record deals. I had a publishing deal with Universal. That's my whole lens, and everything creatively is really, truly as a musician. That's just when I go in the studio, I listen to it that way. And I've been in the recording studio where literally the guitar player and the lead vocalist will risk everything that's important to them in their life, everything that ever will be important, everything that's generationally important to them, to argue over 5 dB difference between a guitar and a vocal, or a half a dB between the hi-hat and the tambourine. And you watch the kind of passion and the focus and the months that go into making these records, and then the record goes out into the marketplace. And they make it at 2496, and the first thing we do is we dither it down to 1644.1 for the optical drive. Then the next thing we do is we send it to our digital partners who encode it into an AAC file. Then the next thing they do is you put it on a laptop, which goes through about 40 cents a sound. Then the next thing you do is you often listen to it earbuds that literally cost $1.50. So what you're seeing is this incredibly rich tapestry of art and emotion that's just filtered into this tiny little bubble. And it's hard to, if you think about, Jimi Hendrix at Monterey burning his guitar, or you think every time you watch Mary J. Blige sing a song, that level of passion and commitment and belief is what is going on tape. And the consumer, the fan, is not getting that anymore. It's getting completely lost in the transmission. So I think when you look at really what Beats is trying to do is get back to delivering the emotion. Sound is about emotion, and the better the sound, the better the emotion.
Does the consumer care? Have we developed sort of a whole generation of kids who are dumbed down to the quality of sound if they're being inflected with all of this bad sound coming out of laptops and perhaps other ways that they're getting packaged headphones? So how do you switch their mind to tell them that it's really important, that the quality of sound is what it's all about?
What's been unique for us, and this is truly a surprise, right? So we started seeing kind of a white space in the market. We really felt like we know sound, it's true to it, we understand what it should be like. Let's try to fix that with a headphone, right? It was a very simple idea. And what we did was we worked really hard. Our IP, if you want to call it that at the beginning, was really just how do we craft something that sounds like the recording studio does to us every day. So where I work, we're fortunate that we have 6 recording studios within a block, and at any given time, it's going to be Timberland, Pharrell, or Polo, or Dre. All of our crew is always working within us. We're in the studio night and day, so we live contemporary music. And so we worked for a couple years in our first headphone to really craft something that really replicated that sound. When we got it, we were very excited, went to market. What shocked us, we didn't expect, was how many people came back and said, what did you do? What'd you do to the music? What'd you do? Is this a different file type? Is this 3D? They'd never actually heard that kind of audio experience before. And what we're finding is probably not dissimilar for video. Once you took a consumer and you went from regular definition to high def, it's hard to go back. It's interesting. My daughter, who's 11, probably has a better understanding of the difference between 720 and 1080 than she does between stereo and mono. She probably has no idea what that is, right? So I think we have a generation of kids who clearly understand video and have an expectation of a quality of video that's very high, but it was not there with audio. But we're finding now, especially for digital natives, is that once you hook them, once they hear it, the muscle memory takes over, and they don't want to go back. And so what we would like to do is try to take that experience and replicate that everywhere sound touches a fan or a consumer.
So it's catching up with the visual industry. Yeah. If you look at, obviously the artist associations, you have a very strong here. But to describe the product line that you've got right now and how those artists fit into it.
So originally we came out with a studio, which was a noise canceling premium headphone that's $299 US. The next product we delivered was a Solo, which is a passive headphone. That's $179. We have our Tours, which is an in-ear. We have Diddy Beats, which we did with Puffy, which are it's another in-ear headphone. We did a sport category, LeBron James, and then we're about to launch our second. Oh, then we did Justin Bieber. We did basically Just Beats, which was an in-ear and an on-ear, and that was specifically targeted to try to get to a slightly younger demo to deliver this message about sound. And then we're about to launch our second generation of Gaga. Her record came out this week. And we have our headphones are out in the States right now. They'll be out in a couple, probably 2 or 3 weeks. And the interesting thing about working, whether it's with Puff or with Gaga or even with Justin, they all really care about how their records sound. We're very fortunate because we walk with the angels. I've never been a musician in my life who doesn't believe in the mission of Beats, because they're like, great, make things sound better. It's the same thing when people say to me, well, don't you worry about your competition. I pray that our competition catches up, right? Because that means the world gets better sound. That means we just have to be better. So with our artist branded product, it's really about, trying to get that message across, and also trying to create things that are, the new Gaga you'll see is very true to Gaga. What we're doing with LeBron on sports is really trying to continue to refine that experience around training and running with a headphone, because again, that's an area we think that's a white space. We try to stay true to the artist, true to the athlete, true to the celebrity, but really focus ultimately on the sound experience. So it's a consistent message.
What's the creative process working with an artist? Can you give an example? And do you come forward with ideas today? Is it a meeting of the minds in the middle?
It's exactly the same. After having spent 21 years in the record business, it's no different than when you work on the album cover, you work on the video. It's highly collaborative. You look at tons of mock-ups of industrial design, tons of ideas. With Gaga, she came to me with a very specific sound profile she wanted. She had an idea of how she wanted this to sound different than her last headphones, and it really came from her live experience and what she's hearing on stage every night, and how that's making her think about her music. And so we tuned them differently for something that she wanted to hear. For LeBron, it really was about fit for him, which is why it comes with a second cable that gives you an extra 3 feet, because he happens to be tall. It's really about trying to find those things that are what's most important to the artist, what do they want in their own personal experience, and if we can replicate that, we think the consumer experience will be great.
And where else are you going if you look at the diversification of sound opportunity? You've done the deal with HP, maybe talk a little bit about that, and what other extensions are you looking at?
Yeah, so when you look at the Beats by Dre business, there's 2 businesses we're building, which the core business is what I call the devices business, which will be Beats. We have our new speaker dock called the Beatbox. We'll have other lines in our speakers, and that's all the devices business, and that's a real focus for us and a lot of opportunity. The second business we're building alongside is what I call the ingredient brand business. And the first articulation of that business is with HP. And what we do is we want to work alongside any consumer electronics company in any place, a car, whether it's a car OEM, a TV manufacturer, a mobile phone OEM, a tablet, a laptop, anybody who touches sound, how do we work with them to make sound better? And what that really means is both on the software side and the hardware side, we work to invest in sound. We work to both from the DSP to bring out a real DSP. What you'll find now, a lot of DSP, which is the digital signal processing that exists on most consumer electronic devices. There's a lot of artificial artifacts. There's a lot of spatialization. There's a lot of things that it's completely irrelevant to actually what goes on in the studio, right? It's somebody in some lab's idea of how they make it sound better. What we do is we try to focus on the software side to make it a more authentic, something very true to the basically input-output. And then we work on the hardware. How do you make a better sound card? How do you make a better amplifier section? How do you make a better power supply? How do you really make that device built for sound? It's interesting. Whenever, especially when we started working with HP, who got it immediately and have been great partners, we said to them, it's basically like Michelangelo finishes the Sistine Chapel, and then he brings in, Pope Julius to look at it, and he puts on night vision goggles. That's the equivalent of what was going on with the computer. It was taking this sound and just squashing it, and literally the wires on most computers, it goes right across the motherboard, right out to the output jack. The output, if you put some PCs, I'll be straight up, Macs sound very, very good. Some PCs are good, most PCs are horrific. And when you compare them next to even an iPod, it'll blow your mind the difference between the output of sound. So HP was a great partner. They immediately got it. They really invested both in the hardware and in the marketing around it. And we think that truly the HP Envies, DV6, DV7s, the whole line with Beats Audio inside are the best sounding PCs in the world. So now we're going to take that business and we're replicating with Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep. And we're doing the same thing. We're going to launch the 300S in September in the States. And we see a bunch of other categories where we think we could really have a real impact on sound.
So a lot of this is happening in the West, and we see you sitting here on a stage in Singapore. What are the plans for Asia? What are you looking at doing?
So we've been very fortunate that we've had, the company's really only had product in the marketplace since 2009. We've had, triple-digit growth every year. This year in Asia in particular, we're over 200% up from where we were last year. So we're growing very quickly. But what we want to do with Beats is we want to come in early and work with not only with local repertoire, but work with local distributors, local channel marketing, and have an authentic experience in every market. So right now, the most robust markets in Asia for us are Japan, Korea, China, Hong Kong. We're really getting going in Taiwan. If you look at Asia Pac, Australia has been very strong for us. But this is actually my 4th trip to Asia since March. And what that is about really is coming and working early alongside our retail partners, our distributors, media, consumers, artists, and trying to have a very authentic, real experience in each region with Beats. So as opposed to, we'll break Beats in North America, and then we'll just ship them into Asia later, The idea is let's work right along the cultural brokers now. Let's work, and most importantly, with the artists. So Korea is a good example. We've done our studio headphone. We just came out this week with Tiger GK, who's a rapper in Korea, who's incredible. We did 2 guys from Big Bang, Top and G-Dragon. We did exclusive beats with them. I'll be in the studio. I'm going to Seoul on Saturday with 21 to work with them. So in that market, we've worked closely with the biggest artists in Korea to really figure out what do they want in a headphone, what do they want to hear, what's a comfortable way for them to market and endorse the product. And that's what we want to replicate across the region.
Okay, so I've got so many more questions. We're 2.5 minutes out for the end of the discussion. So maybe we can throw it to the floor and see if anyone's got something to ask.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask about formats. MP3, where do you see that going with FLAC or other higher quality digital formats, and are they becoming more popular? And what are you guys working on that side of things as well?
Yeah, because Beats is in partnership with Universal. I also still have a label deal and a consultancy with Universal, so I work closely with the Universal Music Group. We really care about that issue. So we're starting with taking the 2496 library that's created in the studio, right? And how do we skip that step of dithering it down for Redbook audio and the optical drive and actually encode from there? So that's the beginning of that. We also believe there's a lot of room to work with AAC as it exists now in AAC Plus in the iTunes format to actually get better sound out of that. And we're constantly, and Apple's been actually very collaborative with us to that regard. Beats, we're not audiophiles, right? So we're not going to look at FLAC or a pure lossless file and say, if you can actually get the emotion across in the file, if you can get the sound across, if you can actually deliver the experience without transients everywhere that confuse the imaging, we're very happy with that. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think as we move towards cloud-based services and streaming, now we have to focus more on that technology and that consumer experience. But it's always going to be a balance between the reality of the consumer experience and convenience versus what we want to accomplish with the sound. So we get to find that balance.
Any other questions? One over here. Steve McClure.
Hi there. Fascinating talk. Really, really interesting. But I just have a devil's advocate question to ask. Doesn't convenience for consumers normally trump quality, or would you argue that the two categories aren't mutually exclusive?
I think that they're not exclusive because, and I'll tell you how I look at that, is to me, music is really about identity, right? It's who you are you in the world, what's your place, are you alone, are you not alone, how do you feel when you're in love, when you're not in love, right? It's a very authentic personal experience. And if people feel like what they're hearing back isn't the real thing, and it's a fake replica, it's like a New Era cap. You don't want a fake New Era cap, you want a New Era cap. It's the same thing with music, and I think if you can train people to hear the difference, which you really can, between a better file form and a better sound experience, that's what's authentic and that's what's real. And so when you're reaching out to that music because your girlfriend just dumped you and it's 2 in the morning and you don't want to feel like you're alone in this world, or you really want to feel like you're alone in this world, you want that best experience possible. So I think that's where you're going to reach for it.
One last question, if there's any. Wow, 5 last questions, 10.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to check, you mentioned a lot of the countries in Asia that you're looking at focusing on. Why not India?
We will focus on India. It's very funny. We were talking to A.R. Rahman for a long time about doing a headphone with him there. India, similar to Brazil, has some very specific tariff issues in terms of how you actually, the taxation of products going in. So we actually need to figure out some local manufacturing opportunities. So as a growing company, it's easy for us to kind of approach the countries that with like less resistance, to be quite honest, right? But we absolutely want to go into India. We just had to figure out our way around the manufacturing issue.
Hi, Ruben.
Thank you. Sorry, we've been called for time. So, Luke, you're here for the next couple of days. I assume you're open for questions and being pitched about artists and asked about all sorts of things. So,
and my in-laws live here, so I'm here a lot.
Great. Luke Wood, thank you very much. It's been great speaking with you, and thank you, audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruben.